Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's panel at EFA 2021. I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which I live and work, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and pay my respects to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders, past and present, and I extend those respects to any Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islanders and global First Nations people present. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. My name is Devon Lang-Wilton and I've worked in film programming and presentation for the last decade. And I would like to introduce you to our panel, all of which have films or content in this year's program. We have Dr. Sarah Laborde, Kelly Moneymaker and Tamara Di Martina. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome.
Hi, everyone.
I'd quickly like to extend to the audience our apologies if anything technical goes awry or I'm just not socialised enough to have communications in this extended lockdown. But welcome all of you. Thank you so much for having your films in the program this year. They're all really brilliant, stunning. We're very proud to have them on board. So firstly, I guess we'll start with Tamara, but if you could introduce yourselves and your practice, your film that's in the festival, and what sort of motivates you to make sustainable content.
Thanks very much, Devon. My name's Tamara Di Martina, and the films, The New Joneses Road Trip, that are in the festival are my first jump into filmmaking, and that's because of COVID. It's our COVID pivot. So my background is PR and comms. 10 years ago, I went to Antarctica to learn about climate change, and ever since have been creating campaigns to engage more people around how do we live sustainably, to raise the issue of climate change and what can we all do to be part of the solution. But we've been doing that for nearly a decade through events. And then cut to COVID, our events program was wiped out. We were going around the country with a house and garden display, an electric car, solar panels, worm farms, chickens, showing what a beautiful life looks like when every choice we make, from our choice of bank to our dunny paper to our energy company, what does it look like when we make a choice for our people and our planet every time? But then come COVID, our events were wiped out. So we've taken all that content and messaging and the storytelling that we've been developing for a long time and turned it into a series of short, sharp documentaries.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it's been a very big change, but I would say COVID has been devastating, but for our program, for the New Joneses, it's actually out of necessity carved a beautiful new path for us to have more impact and to reach more people than me touring around the country with a tiny house and just talking to whoever wanted to listen. Whereas now, you know, the filmmaking and the avenues that has opened up is really exciting.
Oh, that's so great. I'm so glad that there's been a benefit within the filmmaking industry after.
On balance, I'd say no COVID thanks, but you know, we've been able to turn what we do into something better from the necessity of not having face-to-face events and create this new path to reach bigger audiences and tell more stories and give voice to many more people. So I'm really feeling excited and inspired for the next 10 years of the journey to turn the planet around.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. And how about you, Kelly?
I am a filmmaker, musician from Fairbanks, Alaska, which is on Dene land. I'm Alaskan Native and Samoan. I'm currently residing in Tawhanganui Atara, the Maori land, and I'm studying at Massey University, Wellington. And my directorial debut was Vaka, which is the film that's in the festival. And it is about Tokelau's combined use of modern technology and Indigenous knowledge in response to climate crisis.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
No worries. And Sarah, you're up in Broome. How about you?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Sarah or Sarah Laborde. I'm a French woman who have been living in Western Australia for 15 years, and I currently live and work really on Yarra country, here joining you from Broome. And I'm a researcher at Griffith University, currently at the Australian Rivers Institute. I'm a student of the connections between people and water. And I'm an accidental filmmaker. I was just saying this wasn't really a plan to make a film, but I've been working on a project with some traditional owners along the Fitzroy River. That's its English name. And there's lots of other names, obviously, including some that are in the film. And this film came up with one of the senior men that I was working with, also a visual artist, Mervyn Street, Kunyandi man. And we just, put it together to talk about the river and his kind of philosophy around water and the river. So that's the film that's in the festival. It's called Veins of the Country.
Thank you. Yeah. Are you able to sort of extrapolate a little bit on how COVID's affected your practice? Has there been sort of what challenges or benefits have there been for you?
Is that for?
Yeah, for you. I'll extend.
Me first.
A little bit, but yeah.
Okay, sorry. Okay. It hasn't been. I mean, WA has been quite. We haven't had COVID. There's been a couple of lockdowns, but the main issue up here has been some communities have been closed and are still closed. So it depends. Each community chooses, of course, when they whether to stay closed. So I've just had to adjust my work to respect those decisions. And so some communities I can get to and work, and some others I can't. So sometimes people come to town and work together in town, and just like that. So just a bit of adaptation, but I'm used to adapting. My previous work and previous film was in northern Cameroon in Boko Haram times, so we've had to adjust. Everything is always about adaptation, isn't it? And sometimes beautiful things like unseen consequences, like you were just saying, Tamara. With your so
Lovely. And how about you, Kelly?
I wrapped VACA and the biggest problem with COVID was we delayed the film festival circuit because we had to wait for everyone to switch over to digital platforms. And so that was the biggest challenge that we had with VACA. But I'm currently in production of a new film about Indigenous climate adaptation in Alaska. And it is about adaptation all the way around, as Sarah says. As villages closed, we'd have to find other villages. And of course, we are following an Indigenous axiology to make sure that we are doing everything according to village rules and traditions. So all villages have to be cleared through the elders' councils, and the questions have to be cleared first. So as you can imagine the whirlwind of having one village closes, you go to another village, you have to do all the research for the people you're interviewing. Those questions have to be cleared by the elders and then by the interviewees themselves. So it's definitely been a whirlwind, and there's been a serious lack of sleep going on. So if I'm a little bit punchy today, please forgive me.
I think we're all a bit on the same board. What is that film called, Kelly?
The new film is called Drum Song, The Rhythm of Life. And it's just about following this natural rhythm because Indigenous peoples are part of the ecology. All around the world, all Indigenous peoples are part of the ecology, and they follow a natural rhythm. And that's what we're trying to show in Alaska. And the peoples up there have been adapting to all kinds of, drought and cold and whatever challenges they face. They've been adapting for over 17,000 years. So, yeah.
On that point, there's in VACA, a gentleman talks about how a cyclone destroyed the homes in Tokelau, and he says the waves went right through the whole village and took with it things of importance to us. Could you talk a little bit about what climate change's impact can have on those histories and the importance of the land and those disappeared islands can have on traditional customs and cultures?
Yes. Well, Tokelau consists of 3 coral-based atolls, and the difficulty there is that they're being washed away. So there's nothing protecting the shoreline, and so the shoreline is eroding, and the coral isn't being built up fast enough to replenish that. And mostly what the challenges in Tokelau are that they face storm surge events off the back of tsunamis that hit other islands, and they'll ricochet back onto the atolls of Tokelau. And that's what those storm surges inundate the land, which kills all of their gardening, for their vegetables and whatnot. And it just washes everything away. So when they say they lost things of importance, they lost everything. So, and there's nowhere to run. They're at sea level, and there are no mountains, there are no trees. It's huge trees to climb for protection. There's nothing. They have emergency evacuation. They're working on that now. And because they are citizens of New Zealand, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade works very closely with the people of Tokelau and MyCorps, which is the Ministry of Climate, Oceans, Resilience and Environment, which is the government of Tokelau. So they have been working on, emergency services and communications. I do believe they're getting a new cable run right by the atolls of Tokelau, so they'll have better internet communication. And they have an emergency system set up in place now for a storm event. But it is scary. In order to travel there, we flew from New Zealand to Apia, Samoa, and then we took a 55-hour boat ride to the first atoll. And it's open water the whole entire way. So when you land and you're on an atoll that's made of coral, and it's a very thin piece of land where they build their homes, because you have the open ocean, and then you have a lagoon in the center of the coral atoll with a little strip of land where everybody lives. And you definitely feel the vulnerability when you're there.
And I imagine I imagine those historical and culturally significant objects that the Tokelauans own and have for centuries are sort of at risk of being lost forever in these storms. I mean, how does that feel for a community that, due to climate change, that their histories might be sort of like swept away like that?
Oh, their homes, they're actively fighting to save their home. So they're out there building seawalls every day. No one's sitting around, relaxing. From the crack of dawn till the time they go to bed at night, the Tokelauans work nonstop to save their atolls. Mm-hmm. But I have to say though that it's they don't live in fear. I call them solutionists because they work actively together as a village. Each atoll, they work together to figure out how to combat climate crisis, and they are so resourceful and creative because they don't have a hardware store they can just run down and say, oh, we need this and that and whatnot. They have to deal with what they have on the islands, and they're very creative about the way they get things done. Like there was an issue that came up when we were in Otahu, and it was about waste management. And I was in the street and a little scooter went by with someone announcing that there was a village meeting, and they all gathered to discuss how they were going to problem solve. And the children in school, they use context-based learning as part of their schooling program. So the kids are actively out there collecting scientific data. They take their findings to the Topolanga, which is the elder male council. And they have female representatives from the women's council in these meetings. And the children present their findings, and the elders, talk to them about it. And then they create a solution and they go out and solve the problem. One of the things was coral planting. So the kids found out that there were huge portions of the reef that were dying. The coral was dying. And the master fishermen had the access to the boats and the wisdom of where the coral was actively, thriving and where it was suffering. And so the kids went and they planted coral. So I just think it is the coolest. And that would be like here in New Zealand, we're going up to Jacinda Ardern, as a student and saying, hey, we have this data we collected and we want to help solve this problem. And, having that access to your community leaders, what a rare and beautiful thing, right? Yes. Yeah. So multi-generations, all, everyone, every single person is part of the problem solving, which I think is beautiful.
Amazing. Sarah, I guess I'll sort of extend that question to you too. I guess in your film, Veins of the Country, Mervyn draws a direct comparison of the river as the veins of the country and the veins of blood in our bodies. And Mervyn owns this film and his story and his philosophy, and he wants this philosophy spread far and wide. What responsibility do you think film and storytellers have to communicate these stories to create change?
I think it's very, it's a different kind of impact. I think film is beautiful. Obviously, you can, my trade is to write, that's what I normally do. But with this one, you can see this is him speaking directly, and this is him showing what he wants to show. And I know that touches a lot more than when they are intermediate steps. So we took this film to Canberra, for example, to the Department of Environment, and had a really interesting response. To shift my understanding of this river, as opposed to, you know, a resource and having to plan and think about development versus conservation versus this kind of touches the heart when it's more human to human connection. And of course, film allows that a lot better than writing. There are a couple of other films that are being made about what's happening up here around this river at the moment. So one's called The Serpent's Tail, and I think if people want to look it up, they can find some information. And I know it's also playing a really important role in raising awareness around the country, around indigenous philosophies and the ways that people relate to the country and relate to water, and why this is really meaningful, and why there are some contests that are happening and negotiations that are happening between different ways of relating to water up here at the moment. Yeah, so I think film is really it's a growing medium for that kind of education. Yeah.
Yeah. And what impact do you think that climate change has on those communities that rely on the land and the river for its like literal lifeblood?
It's unclear up here. There are definitely some shifts that people are observing in terms of the cycles, but the main concern at the moment around this river, so it's more development. So, and what kind of development will happen? So people are concerned about water extraction. Many people are concerned about water extraction, I should say. Of course, not everybody. So that's the key concern. And of course, this will compound with climate, but it's not clear here whether climate change is leading to more or less rain. So yeah, it's not as easy to see the impact as what Kelly was, for example, describing, which was so striking, like a very clear impact. Up here, it's not yet very clear, I think, but there are some other impacts. I mean, what we humans are doing to the earth. Of course, climate change is part of that, but there are also some direct impacts. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you able to talk a little bit about the sort of unsustainable processes of water? What's it called? Water
extraction.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Extraction. Yeah. Yeah, so it's not yet. So the Fitzroy, or its Nigana name is Madwara, and it's not the Gunian. I might use. There is a council that has been created that's using that name. So it's the Nigana name for this river, and then there are 10 language groups. So there are other names. I just want to acknowledge that. So the Madwara is not yet there is just one station that's extracting a couple of gigaliters of water planning around it. So there's a growing interest for extraction for irrigated agriculture. And so the state government here is working on an allocation plan, so trying to work out balancing different needs. So the question is, who gets to make those decisions? And this is a catchment that's overwhelmingly, I think it's covered 98% by native title. So it's managed by traditional owners, but there are some, it's all complicated in native title law, but in terms of water and land, so the Crown is still responsible for the water within current Australian law. And so what traditionals are wanting to do is really have their voices heard at the government level to work out a solution together, as opposed to being kind of consulted or being left with the consequences of what happens. So those are planning processes that are happening at the moment. And there's been very clear position by traditional owners that they don't want any dam on this river, and they want very careful management water exchange. So that's just what's going on at the moment. And one of the things they're afraid of is they don't want another Mary Darling. They keep saying this, we've seen what's happening in other places, and we don't want our country to turn into that. So there's amazing people, leaders, Aboriginal leaders here leading that work.
Amazing.
May I interject on this too? Because I think that Indigenous land stewardship is a huge topic right now. I think it's been proven that corporations and governments aren't looking after the lands, and capitalism has destroyed environments. And so giving that land back to the people who are part of that ecology, who care for the land and the animal management, they only take what they need, and they've been part of the ecology for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, before settlements came in and built fences and started claiming lands and not treating them with respect. So, and water extraction is a big problem, and it's not just from farming, but also from corporations that come in, pay very small fees to access water that doesn't belong to them, and they extract it and then sell it back to us in a plastic bottle. And this has to stop. Nestle is destroying the world. They are actively going after and trying to control all of the water aquifers around the globe. And this is another part of the Indigenous land and water fight. Water is a human right, but according to Nestle, it's not. Only the rich can have access to water. And so right now there's a big issue down here on the South Island because the mayor of Christchurch has denied water extraction, which I think is very courageous. And in Alaska, we've been fighting against the extraction from the Tongass National Rainforest. We've also been fighting copper mining and pebble mining. When Lake Iliamna, Biden has just reinstated the Clean Water Act because they were about to put a huge mine in there. And to clarify gold and copper, they use cyanide at the top of a watershed that feeds the entire western region of Alaska. So when that cyanide leaks, and when I say when, because it will leak, it would kill everything in its path. And now they're fighting another one. They're trying to do fracking in Anwar. So they're using seismic testing right now in Anwar, and it's going to be the same exact issue. So land stewardship is important. Native land stewardship is very, very important for the future. And here they're trying to do the same thing right now. There's a big fight in up north here in Aotearoa for trying to protect the fairy penguins, the little blue penguins. So I know that the Maori people have been actively trying to stake their claim and make sure that the harbor that's going in up north isn't going to destroy that population, because they've been moving the boulders, and that's where the penguins lay their eggs, in the cracks of these giant boulders. I
guess on that, what I'm sort of opening this up to everyone, but what significance or what's the responsibility of film to send these messages and to communicate this to audiences who aren't, you know, wherever these issues sort of are? Maybe you, Tamara.
That's great that you asked me the question, because I was going to pose that to Kelly. What I'm doing with the New Joneses and what we've been doing for a long time is taking what the big kahuna burgers, what the experts, what the Indigenous people are saying, and making that really digestible for people on the street who they're not super passionate about these things like us. They're going about their daily lives. They've got a household full of kids maybe that they're trying to educate and raise, and working 2 jobs. I know so many of my friends who are passionate, great people, but they don't have extra time and brain space to put to this. They see that there's a problem, but then there's this massive gap between what can I do about it?
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I try to do with my programs is I take what the experts are saying and bring it down to a very grassroots in your daily home. So those actions that are really doable for everyone, like changing your bank, changing your energy company, the food that we eat, you know, the clothes that we wear, where do we source those things? Understanding my other program, it's Buy Nothing New Month. That is to get people thinking about our stuff and who made it and what were their working conditions. And when we throw something away, where is a way? So my programs are all to try to get people to see that there are these big issues and give them a way, a small way that they can be part of the solution in their lives, in our lives. So Kelly, my question to you is, what would your call to action be? Because my programs are very much about what can people do? Because I think many of us feel very disempowered. We know what's going on the planet. What can we do? And so Kelly, what would be your message from the work that you're doing? And
Well, first of all, as filmmakers, it's our job to raise awareness about these issues and make them available to people so that they can see them. And, you know, I commend both of you for the work that you're doing. And it's also about making those products available and making it as easy as possible. So the people like us who do have the time and dedicate our lives to these situations, it's our job to make it as easy as possible, like you said. And so I was just explaining to someone that there's a brand of ice cream here that's just gone to plastic-free packaging. So, you know, when people know about it, the consumers will make those choices in the grocery store. Like, am I going to get this that I have to go recycle a bunch of plastic, or know that that's going to go to landfill most likely, or pollute the ocean, or am I going to buy this box that I can recycle over here, right? And you know, I feel that people do make good choices when they're available to them. Part of my filmmaking technique is filmmaking is usually a very wasteful, very toxic profession, you know. And so part of mine is putting the storytelling in the hands of the local people. So I'm actually directing and producing where I am, and then hiring people locally on the ground to do those jobs. That way it's a local story. It's put in the hands of local storytellers. And those people are going to tell me what's most important in their region. Even though I am Alaskan Native and I was born and raised in Fairbanks, I can't speak for the people in Shishmaref. I can't speak for the people in Kotzebue. I need them to tell me their stories. So I'm not actively flying all the way over there and then flying all the way back and spending that fuel. I've actually hired people on the ground. I'm communicating over the phone, and I'm allowing them to tell their stories. That's just one way that I contribute. But raising awareness is the first thing. And again, it's like, stop buying bottled water. Okay. Everyone in the world just needs to stop buying bottled water. If it comes in a plastic bottle, please, I just beg of you, do not do that. If you can see the whales and the walruses and the seals that come and you cut, and the sharks, even, you cut their bellies open and they're full of plastic. We're losing seabirds at an astronomical rate because the parents are picking up plastics and feeding it to the babies, you know, because they think it's food, or they're eating things that have plastic in them, and they're feeding the babies. And those baby birds eat a lot of food, and they're dying, they're suffocating because they're being fed plastics. So stop drinking out of a plastic bottle. There's no excuse. There's a million different types of recyclable containers now. And there's great filters that you can get if you're worried about taking fluoride and chemicals out of your water, but don't put it in a plastic bottle. And also, that plastic leaches and causes cancer. So why would you want to do that to yourself anyway?
Now, Tamara, you have an episode where you sort of basically go into zero waste. Can you discuss sort of, that episode or how that sort of...
Sure. Well, I think zero waste is really the fundamental. It's what all of our messaging is about, and trying to help people understand that waste is bad for everyone. It's bad for our environment. It's bad for our people. But many of our episodes actually touch on a sort of zero waste. We interviewed Tish King, and she's a Torres Strait Islander, and she lets us into her home to talk about how climate change is impacting the Torres Strait Islanders now with king tides, similar sort of story to what you were talking about before, Kelly. But Tish shows us all those choices that she makes in her daily life. Just to your point, Kelly, there's no plastic. It's all reusable. It's eliminating all of those plastics and all the packaging that is not necessary. And she talks about the traditional owners. They don't have these unnatural practices. They didn't have waste in their worlds. And that's very much something that I try to do in my life. Everything I buy is secondhand, in my clothing to everything I buy in my home. It's more challenging when it comes to food and hygiene products and all of those sorts of things. So whilst that episode is telling people to aim for a zero waste life, I think it's really worth raising that concept of the ladder of what's possible. And instead of going zero waste life, that's not achievable for a lot of people in a modern world. So we would love people to sort of step through what are the things I can do. So it is like, if it is just a really simple thing, by like saying, I'm never going to buy something again in a plastic bottle. I'm never buying bottled water again. That's something people can achieve. And then once they do that, then they can move on to the next stage. But eliminating the waste, that's a massive passion, and something that really drives me, because so many of the problems that we're creating for our people, as you say, Kelly, like there's toxins in the plastic. It's not just it's bad for environment, it's bad for us. And what's bad for our environment is bad for us. But it's such an important message to help people understand that, how connected we are, and what we do to our environment, we do to ourselves. Promoting the zero waste life. We also touch on that when we met Joost Bakker, who many people would know for his work. He's been doing amazing stuff in this space for a really long time, promoting a world without waste. So in Melbourne, at the moment, he has, I think it's called the Future Food System, where they've built a home on Fed Square. And he had some people living there for, I think it was 3 to 6 months, consuming only what they created on site. So there was no packaging, there was no waste. And it was this beautiful, inspiring ecosystem to show what is possible. Like literally in the middle of the city, they've been able to create everything that they needed to get by. So whilst that's not accessible and doable for everyone, I think that's kind of like a North Star to go look at what these amazing people who are living that zero waste life. Very difficult for a lot of people with, kids with demands and all that stuff. And I'm very sensitive to that a lot of people don't have the time to put to it in the same way that I can. But offering that as a North Star of we're aiming for zero waste, so do everything we can to eliminate those things that we don't need in our lives. I've got a really beautiful anecdote actually with the New Joneses. As I said earlier, we used to be a physical activation. We'd set up this beautiful house, garden, electric car, solar panels, high tech through to low tech, showing all the choices that we can all make in our lives that are good for our people and our planet. And we would be at the flower and garden show or the home shows or council events. So we would literally just this physical activation to inspire people of what a beautiful life looks like when we are aiming for zero waste, etc. And we would do vox pops. We'd go and ask people who are walking past, what's something you've done today for the environment? And one of my favorite responses of the hundreds and maybe thousands of people that we asked this question of was an older man. I reckon he would have been in his maybe about 80, 85. And he said, oh God, I don't do anything for the environment ever. And I was sort of taken aback, but then he said, actually, no, on my way here, I went to buy a chocolate milk, which I love chocolate milk. And then he said, I saw that it was only available in a plastic bottle. So I decided I wasn't going to do that. And that to me was so amazing that a man in his 80s who has lived in this wasteful period of our time could go, no, I love chocolate milk, but I'm not having that because it's coming in the plastic bottle. So little bits like that really give me hope that people are getting the message, and we will start seeing a shift much faster now when, so many people have been doing so much work in this space for a long time. I feel like now it's hitting home.
Yeah. And there's so many simple things people can do to help out. I mean, buying in bulk is cheaper anyway. So why wouldn't you buy in bulk and then refill your plastic containers that you had for soap and refill that thing time and time again off of a bulk, shopping spree rather than, or I know people who eat meat and they share a cow. So they'll go in on a cow, through an organic butcher, and they will buy a cow together and they split up the meat. That meat's being wrapped in paper. It's not being wrapped in a foam tray with plastic over the top. Just thinking about my daughter's snacks that she likes, to take in her school lunch. We we buy bigger bags or bulk things and then divide it into smaller waste-free packaging that she can use over and over again, her little tins that she takes to school. So these are all things that we can do and help each other. We have a veggie powered Land Cruiser. So we go around to like sushi places and pick up oil, and my husband filters it. And that's how we drive around Wellington. So there's always things that you can, and that is just a straight up old biodiesel engine, wasn't a lot to do with that. You just filter the oil that you're putting into it, because biodiesel engines were made to run on veggie oil.
Yeah. Sarah, do you have any experiences with connecting with Australian audiences or markets? Have there been any sort of key patterns or things that you found are really successful?
Sorry, was that for me? I didn't.
Yeah, if that's okay. Yeah. Did you
Can you repeat the question? My connection is not great.
I was wondering if you could share any experiences that you had with Australian audiences, or if there was anything that you found was really successful in terms of connecting with people.
I think I was just reflecting as you were all talking about, as your original question about the power of filmmaking, and I think, and a quote came up to my mind. Another elder from another language that I work with was talking about communication, and he said we don't need to tell people what to do. We need them to know how we feel. We need them to feel how we feel, basically. So I think the power of film through storytelling, there is an extra, and of course everything is important, like at all levels. So there's like those little tiny bits that everybody can do day to day, but then also what I see in Mervyn's story, for example, is the deep philosophical aspect of, like, as before, when we hurt, Tamara, sorry, it was Tamara, when we hurt the land, we hurt ourselves. And so looking at that relationship and that reciprocal relationship, that we're not here living in this objectified world that's made of resources, which we might want to conserve or minimize impact, but that it's like all living beings, and we're living in these communities that include more than humans, and of course include water. And so then that changes the whole perspective, like, well, how would I interact with this water place if I feel its aliveness before I interact with it, or with this tree, or with this. And I think that, of course, it might sound a bit philosophical and abstract, but I think when more and more of these messages come out, like, for example, when the Whanganui tribe in New Zealand, when the Whanganui River got legal rights, personhood in legal terms, that might have seemed like a symbolic thing to do from the outside, but as we hear more and more of these kind of relational ways of, in this case with water, more common, then more people start feeling like, oh, well, then, how would I think if I thought of this river as a living entity? How would I, and that I think is also deeply helpful framework with which we function. And of course, within that, all the messages about every little bit that we can all change in our day-to-day life fit within that as well. But it provides a framework for it. I don't know if I'm making sense, but no, I found that this story really yeah, when someone's speaking from their heart, like Mervyn does all the time, it's you can feel, right, how he's feeling about this, and then there's something else there than just the message, I think, and film can help with that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So talking about film as the ultimate in empathy, the empathy machine, you know, being able to access people's emotions, and that's, I guess, what makes you act, you know, your empathies. Yeah.
I think that really encapsulates the Indigenous mindset, actually, because we're part of the land and the water, right? Everything is related to each other. And I think that if people had more of that mindset, they would nurture the environment more because you're part of it. Whereas this Western perspective of I'm going to conquer the land, and therefore by conquering it, it means going and hunting the biggest animal, right? Trophy hunting is I'm going to kill the biggest thing. Killing the biggest thing destroys the bloodlines for those animals. Whereas the Indigenous know that that's their brother or sister. And in Alaska, if you go hunting or fishing, you ask the spirit world to speak to the animal world, and that animal sacrifices itself as a gift to humanity so that we can survive. And because of that, every single part of the animal is used because you're honoring that animal for giving up its life, right? And you know that you can't survive without that. So, and you keep your water clean because the fish need to return to that water so that you can fish and survive, and you need to drink that water. Once you're part of nature, you take care of it. But somewhere along the way in the industrial age, everyone became separated from nature, and therefore it's something to be explored and conquered. Like I was just reading this paper about Into the Wild. You know that story where the young boy goes, there's film of him in Fairbanks, right? And he goes up there and he basically eats the wrong berries and poisons himself and dies, and was starving anyway because he killed a moose and then didn't know how to store it. So it rotted. He was only like literally a couple of thousand feet from a native village where he could have learned how to, which berries to eat and how to get help with someone teaching him how to hunt and pack out a moose. So, and for some reason, the natives have been wiped off of the planet when these things happen. It's like, there were people who were existing there before the fences went down, and that needs to be honored and it needs to be appreciated. And we need to learn from the people who are surviving doing the subsistence lifestyle because they're taking care of that water, right? How many tribes are surviving because of that river system that in your film? Many indigenous people.
Thanks, Kelly.
I wonder if after COVID and the lockdown, certainly where I am in Melbourne, they say we've had the longest lockdowns of anyone in the world. And I hear it all the time from people here saying, I just had to connect to nature. The only thing that kept me sane was walking along the rivers or getting into the parks. And if that could be a silver lining, is that people, again, through just a very devastating and disruptive event like COVID, it has reminded people how much we need nature, how much we rely on nature for our mental health. And I think as we've moved more into cities and we've been so disconnected from the land, or kids thinking that milk comes from a carton, not from a cow, all of those sort of funny but devastating stories that, to your point, Kelly, we have lost that knowledge, hasn't been passed down, or the wisdom that is in the trees, that's been disconnected as we've moved into cities and we look more at our screens rather than looking out to nature and all the knowledge and truth that is in nature. I have felt a few times hope over COVID of people going, the thing that got me through was nature and getting back to nature. And I think that does give me hope. Once people realize what it is, how important nature is, it is our life support system, then they will move more towards protecting it and seeing that as us rather than a nice to have.
And
I was just going to say one beautiful thing that happened when I was in Tokelau is, they have very little out there, right? They don't have all the modern amenities that we have. I mean, they have they have those, but they don't have like giant malls and stores and things. And I thought it was so beautiful because their mindset is all about the beautiful land and water and the pride of their atolls and their homeland. And I was being taken out by one of the master fishermen in a boat, and they were gathering coconuts, and we had just got a bunch of fish out on the fishing expedition. And he said, I wish we could share this with the rest of the world. I wish we could ship our coconuts and our fish to everyone so they could eat this beautiful, nourishing food, you know? And I just thought that was so beautiful. And that mindset too, of not just caring about yourselves and the land you're on, but also caring about the global tribe and other people. And that mindset, it's just so beautiful. And it really struck my heart when I was in Tokelau. So, yeah.
I guess that sort of opens up the question to how do you see a post-COVID sustainable world? You know, like you were saying, Tamara, people have sort of gone back to nature. Do you see that continuing? Do you see people sort of actively re-engaging with those things post-COVID, or how do you all sort of see that new navigation of the new post-COVID world?
Who would like to go?
You go first.
I feel more positive that COVID has been a massive reset. I struggled for a long time to help people understand we live on this beautiful planet with finite resources. When everyone just rocks up to the mall or the shopping centre and whatever you need is there, it's been really difficult to help people understand that stuff has come from somewhere, that it's finite, you know. Whereas now people have rocked up and seen an empty supermarket shelf, and they've actually for the first time gone, whoa, our systems are fragile. And I hope that people remember that. But I think I've not heard anyone say, oh God, for the lockdowns, I'm just desperate to get to the shopping mall. I can't wait to go and buy a huge amount of stuff. We just want to see our friends and our people and our loved ones. So I hope that is what will come out of it, that we'll really appreciate those get-togethers. Like the thing that we really crave is human contact and human connection. So I think it's a chance for us to have reset and just to everyone get massively smacked around, myself included. Like my business was events, so it's not as though I'm saying something in a very lacking in compassion way. Like I got smacked around by COVID myself, and it has been devastating for so many people and so many industries. But I feel like it's a chance for us to rethink and go down a different path. Whereas before COVID, we were very much on that path of flying around, crazy busy, consumption. This is a chance to change path. So I feel hopeful.
And Sarah?
Yeah, well, it's a strange year because it feels like we're pre-COVID, honestly, in WA still. Like it's not, there's fear around what will happen when it comes here, because we live normally. But I think I agree with, I think there's been some ranking by people what's essential in each of our lives and what's not essential. And so that's been an opportunity there. I think the thing about people in how reliant they are on nature, that's an important step. But what I think, as Kelly was saying, Indigenous teachers, what we can really learn is that it's not just about us being dependent on, that we also have a responsibility to give, and that can be in all sorts of ways. But like just even going to a place and asking or going to, I don't know, a raspberry bush and asking permission. Those might be, you know, little things, but just to feel that connection in more than just oh, I depend on this resource kind. And yeah, I think it's reminded us of our connectivity as well. Like, you know, something like a virus can just and our need for connection. So I don't know.
Yeah, beautiful.
But again, it's weird here. Obviously, I know what's happening in France because I've been in touch with France a lot. But WA is like, yeah.
Yeah. I see. How about you, Kelly? Oh, I think you're muted.
I'm muted. Yeah, I was trying to keep it's loud out here right now. I do think we all crave that human connection. We had we've had 2 lockdowns here in New Zealand, and they were both relatively short compared to what everyone else is going through. But I know that my neighbors, we went out on the decks to hula hoop together just so we could see faces. With our kids, out there, and it made all the difference just to look over and say, "Hey neighbor, how are you doing?" But I think I'm hoping that people come out of this more appreciative. I know my friends in the States have been in lockdown for 1.5 years, and they're starting to see hope and come out of it now. But yeah, I do hope that people come out more appreciative. I can honestly say that getting connected back to nature, like even if you have a little small garden and you're tooling around in the dirt, just anything to get back in touch with nature, because I think that's the first key to appreciating it, is being within it. Like we go forest bathing around here. Anytime I'm on the computer all the time, editing and doing music and stuff, and forest bathing saves my sanity. And having a dog and walking your dog, that saves my sanity. But and I think that I just found out that by doing this new film, Drum Song, The Rhythm of Life, there is a native school that will be opening in Alaska to teach you how to hunt and break down an animal and use every part of it. It will teach you how to garden in extreme conditions and how to pickle and jar and do all these things. We have very long winters in Alaska, so you can imagine the preparation that goes into storing up for winter. But so there will be a school opening up there. And just educating yourself, what is a way that, we could, I don't know, even if we're in lockdown, like ways to communicate. I have neighbors that have these little jams, and they all go out on their porches and everybody plays music at a certain time every Sunday, and it's just finding those ways to connect if you're still in lockdown. I feel bad for people in Auckland. They're still in lockdown, and we've had more freedom down here in Wellington, but reaching out,
yeah. And just one point following up on this, Kelly, I think even though we're talking about real connection and realizing how important that is, but with COVID, we have, as much as this is difficult for me, the Zoom thing, I'm really terrible at it, but we have seen some amazing networks including across, say, traditional owners up here, connecting with some people in the Amazon, connecting. Like, I think, in a way, COVID has forced this digital. I mean, it was already really forced it, and there are some really beautiful things and teachings that are starting to come out of that. So that's another interesting COVID.
That's beautiful. Yeah, absolutely.
I guess on this sort of closing note, is there anything that from your films or from something that you've seen or lived, is there something that you'd like the audience to take away with them today after seeing this panel? Tamara, perhaps you go.
Thanks, Devin. Absolutely. I think someone raised earlier about films being about raising awareness, and I would love to see much more than just awareness raising. So many of us have been raising awareness of these issues for such a very long time, and now it's really time for action. So for the audience there, people watching, watch these beautiful, educational, inspiring films and then go and do something, take the action. And with the new Joneses stuff, we've tried to take all of that work out of it for you. So we've framed the problem, and then we even tell you what we would like you to do to be part of the solution. So my takeaway for people would be just really get active and look at the areas in our lives that we can have the most impact, and we know what those things are. It's clear now. If I won't go into them now, but they're all over the new Joneses, and none of it none of it is out of the hands of anyone. So the things we can do, like voting with our dollar, actually who we vote for, all of those really impactful things. We are powerful beyond words. So watch these films, get inspired, and take action.
Thank you. How about you, Kelly?
I would like to ask everyone to start listening to Indigenous voices around the world. the elders they have been passing down knowledge from their ancestors and the ancestors before those ancestors. And there is so much wisdom in their indigenous knowledge that we can learn from and share. And I beg everyone to start, first of all, recognize the land that you live on and who that belonged to before the fences went down. And then look to those people to see if you can actively learn from them. And also Indigenous Peoples Day is tomorrow in North America, right? It's Indigenous Peoples Day. So please honor that. And it is Indigenous Peoples Day here Tuesday in Australasia. So.
Oh, brilliant.
Thank you.
How about you, Sarah? Any closing thoughts?
Kelly, I think there is the wisdom and the generosity that that I've had the opportunity to be exposed to here, working with Aboriginal people area, is really, I mean, can help so much, can help us all, I think. And yeah, I know it's not always easy for Australians in the city to do that. How do I learn? That's where films, to start with, there are lots of films and resources that are out there. So I'd encourage. And another one about water, it's simply like, I think there is, being immersed in the beautiful imagery of, Northern Australia for this particular film. But for me, one of the messages that comes through, anyone in their house, if they have lucky enough to have a tap, or whatever water they drink, is to think about, okay, where's this water coming from? The catchment, where did it fall as rain, and how did it, to sort of connect that resource that we have in our, and that's how we were brought up, a lot of us, to that natural system and all of that connection, which can then maybe go for a walk to that catchment, like to see the little streams and the creeks and the rivers, and to sort of reconnect this resource to the living system that it is. Yeah. And that can be done with air, and that can be done with food, of course, any food, and that can be done with paper, whatever.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's such a nice thought to leave on. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you, Tamara. I'd also like to extend those thanks to Bank Australia, to Schwartz Media, City of Darebin, and Dominic Marconi for organising this event today. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the festival, and yeah, please share and do what you can to maintain the loveliness of this world as we have it now.
Thank you, Devin. Thank you both for the work that you do. I'm so proud to be on this feed with you guys today. Thank you so much. Oh, bye. I gotta go. Bye. Thank you. Bye.